have you ever had to deal with corruption in a hood you've been playing for a while? If so, were you able to recover anything from it? No. I have never had a neighborhood corrupted that I know of or that I can think of. The threat of corruption is extremely overblown, in my opinion.
Hi, I have always wanted to make a video about the cultural impact of The Sims 2's corruption. Even before I made videos on The Sims 2, I always thought that was a very peculiar side of the Sims community. The fascination and obsession with corruption. As you've seen in the opening of this video, Cindy, Pleasant Sims, said that she's never had any corruption in her game at all. When I asked her about it, user Tannic Sims 2 also told me that she's never been faced with corruption that just happened poof out of thin air. It is said on multiple places though on the internet that corruption is always out to get you. And it can happen to anyone, anytime, for any reason. You do not actually have to do anything that breaks your game. It'll just happen. If it wants to happen, it will. And you're never safe from it. At least that's what I get from it. The way people talk about it, it's like your game is infected. From the start. The game is blight. Blightgate. Your game is blight. From the beginning, there is nothing you can do to stop the blight. You just have to watch your game burn. But do you really? I have experienced corruption in The Sims 2 once. I was probably 9 or 10. And I was playing in my custom neighborhood at the time. I was playing one family pretty much exclusively, as I had always done before I was introduced to rotational gameplay on YouTube. One day, the mother of the family went to work and never came back. Her adopted daughter just straight up disappeared shortly after. Her adult and pregnant daughter died while she had nothing wrong with her. No low motives, no sickness. I left the family because I was too scared of what was happening. And after a couple months of being scared and refusing to open the hood again, I deleted it. That was my first and only experience with what we call corruption. Corruption, a concept that seems to fascinate players as much as it scares them. Videos on the topic seem to be quite popular, but the most popular are those that try to cause corruption on purpose, for fun. Sure, wacky things start to happen in their towns, but is it really corruption, or just odd game behavior from messing with game files, or what we love to call the spaghetti coding of the game? Well, let's learn more about it to be able to fully pinpoint what is and isn't corruption. You've probably heard people make a point to differentiate hood corruption and game corruption before. The difference between the two lies in where the files get corrupted, and the lesser of two evils is neighborhood corruption. In that best case scenario, it is the files of a neighborhood that get jumbled up. either randomly or from a player's interventions in-game or in the external program SimPE. The possible causes and results of neighborhood corruption are numerous. Well-known causes are deleting families or sims, deleting a lot that was previously inhabited, changing the zoning of a lot while a family lives on it, putting an inhabited lot in the housing bin, and adding an inhabited house from the housing bin to your hood, though some households may have been patched or fixed in clean templates, amongst many others. The effects, well, they are as countless as they are alleged. They can range from sims disappearing, random relationships appearing, lots deleting themselves, lots going on top of roads, sims related by blood getting into romantical relationships, toddlers getting wants to woohoo, and you get the drill. Things get messed up. But how much of that is actual corruption? How can we tell if it's not just the game being weird, especially when we only have one specific problem going on? And if it's fixable, was it ever really corrupted? But if you want the definition of someone who knew a lot more about messing with game files than I do, here is Matilda's take on corruption. Matilda was a prominent Sims 2 modder and program creator, and as good of a corruption expert as you could find. She explained corruption in a very simply put way that really encompasses the issue caused and why the coding of the game is often blamed for its fragility. Basically, corruption happens because the game works by reading data and using it to run the simulation. But broken data, or data that is incomplete, still gets pulled up and is used by the game. Also, the game comes with data that is sometimes already in a questionable state. The bigger problem, though, are the issues caused by the use of bad data, and the bad data these issues caused, which then causes the game to pull up more bad data. It's the corruption cycle. When I asked her about it, creator Tannic Sims 2 said this about her definition of corruption, and I quote, "It really does come back to one thing: data. Invalid data, improperly deleted data, arbitrary data, except the game doesn't know it's invalid." The Sims 2 does not error check, and Matilda's theory as to why that is that error checking usually slows down programs a lot. Since a game as big as The Sims 2 came out when people still had cathode screens and Windows 98, it needed all the chances it could take to run smoothly. So unfortunately, the game does not check for errors and fix them as you play. But as I said before, not every file of broken data is made equal, and most of them will not cause irreparable damage to your game, especially if you are proactive. There are programs on the internet to make it easier for you to clean up any errors not caught by the game that could end up being a problem in the long run. Hood Checker is a very simple program that allows you to check for invalid data it can find, mainly in the relationships between two Sims or the memories of those Sims. You can choose to delete that particular data to keep your hood going as long as it can, but never forget to back up your hood if something doesn't work. Same goes for SimPE, a program that allows you to look at the files of every Sim in your hoods, but also modify package files and probably other things I'm too scared to try. I'm honestly still kind of noobish with SimPE. I don't really know what I'm doing in it, but a lot of people know what they're doing and make tutorials online. That's how I was able to modify a shorter pregnancy mod to be exactly 48 hours, the length I wanted it in my game. Simply put, the game corrupts itself with broken files. But the original broken files are often the result of discouraged things being done in the game, like deleting Sims, removing custom foods, marrying Don Lothario. Okay, that last one is a joke. I guess that means only you can stop the chain of infection. Yet, some people say corruption can sometimes happen for no reason. What gives? My theory is that a lot of people think they are experiencing corruption when they aren't. Every strange little thing that happens in game is pointed at and dubbed corruption. If it was that easy to corrupt your hoods, nobody could keep it safe for more than 3 weeks. The Sims 2 is a weird game. It has weird quirks, and sometimes it does odd shit. If you haven't done anything to cause it, chances are that you're just having a weird game bug and not corruption. I feel like corruption is this thing where when you have it, you know it. It can't be anything else. It's disturbing and not at all typical game behavior. When you look at a hood with houses in the sky and almost all townies turning into dogs, you know something really messed up is happening. The one type of corruption I take seriously, though, is game corruption. The The only reason why is that if you fuck something up, there is no fixing it. You have to reinstall. Here, there is no doubt that the game is corrupted. And the game doesn't only get weird, it becomes unplayable. If you care about your hoods and your sims, that can be devastating. But why would it ever happen? Game corruption occurs when the game files, so the files deep within your program files, get modified in a way they shouldn't. For example, you really shouldn't mess with universal NPCs, since they're treated as objects and not people. I know it might be tempting to pull an Olive Spectre and do the old naked tango with death, but all that's gonna get you is a broken game. An easier and sneakier way to mess with universal NPCs that you may not even know of is through the networking function that came with Apartment Life. If you play in Strange Town and network with Bella, for example, or if you play in a town that barely has any townies and network with one of the rare ones you have, they might try to hook you up with a universal NPC, like the therapist or a hula zombie. Once they suggest this to you, even if you say no, the harm is done. It's that easy to corrupt your game. At least that's what people say. I've heard corruption can happen overnight. Corruption can take months to show up. Corruption can happen gradually until a hood is unplayable. It can take years before something you did early in game translates into corruption. All of that guesswork is starting to make players feel more and more like corruption isn't even that big of a threat. All the fuss around corruption is also scaring potential new players away. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and plenty of guides on how to avoid corruption. So why are people still getting it? I'm starting to wonder if half the things we're scared of aren't even real culprits. Also, many situations believed to cause corruption are extremely hard to recreate when done on purpose, even sometimes impossible, and the result is rarely the one that is widely believed to happen. Have we scared ourselves with this whole corruption business so much that we can't even tell what is and isn't dangerous? Is the whole concept of corruption in The Sims 2 grossly overblown? Let's say you know what you're doing. You're an experienced player, and you have all the anti-corruption mods you can have. You also have a couple of debugging objects that you can use in case weird things happen that need a quick fix. You use clean templates, and you never ever delete Sims. One day, you open your game, and for some reason, Don Lothario and Alexander Goth are married despite barely knowing each other. You quit without saving and look with Hood Checker, but it doesn't find anything. You open your game and make them break up. Then you remove all memories of this ever happening from the both of them and every sim related to them. You resume playing as usual with a weird feeling in your stomach, feeling like you're losing your game to corruption. Well, are you? That very situation has happened to me. And at first I was ready to blame big bad corruption and start with a brand new Pleasant View, even though I was able to fix the situation with just a couple of mods, and could have easily ignored the situation until both Sims were dead. I jumped the gun and cried wolf. That was probably a case of the game's wires getting crossed as it likes to do, and nothing dangerous at all. But I had become so scared of corruption that I refused to see it as anything else but a bad omen. Are bugs not allowed to happen anymore? Must everything be corruption? You could argue it's careless not to consider that it might be corruption. But believe it or not, I like to enjoy myself and not worry about everything 24/7. Sometimes it seems that corruption in The Sims 2 is inevitable, but there are much more pervasive and game-breaking situations in other sim games that we barely talk about. I can never go more than 2 or 3 months with the same save file in The Sims 3 until it won't let me save my game anymore. Error code 12 or 16 and I are well acquainted, and no matter the amount of fixes online, it always seems to find me and break my saves in a new way. When I installed a random patch for The Sims 4 in March 2021, the simulation lag became so prevalent that I couldn't even play anymore. It took my Sims 20 real-time minutes to go to the bathroom. My Sims would teleport up and down the stairs and their needs would drop randomly when game time caught up. To this day, almost 8 years after the game was released, simulation lag is still not fixed. Time lags and jumps. Sims complete actions after you've cancelled them, and they'll walk all the way to their spawn point, only to walk right back when you direct them to do something. I understand that corruption is almost this freak show, that it's intriguing to see what can happen and how we can break the game from the inside. But for something that can take years to appear and break your game, it takes a lot of flack. Also, if you need to mess with the game so much for any weird little thing to happen, that isn't corruption, that's just you breaking stuff. You may have seen content online about how the base game neighborhoods, or even just the pre-made neighborhoods for all expansions of The Sims 2, are inherently corrupted. Data is missing, memories are weird, relationships don't make sense, living Sims are enemies with dead Sims, and the like. I wouldn't necessarily call that corruption, but rather programming mistakes. You won't open Strange Town for the first time and find a curious observatory in the middle of the street, or Loki Beaker thinking his mother is a potted plant. It is true that the condition these hoods shipped in with the game are breeding grounds for corruption to happen, but we have clean neighborhoods templates nowadays that save you the hassle of worrying about little Tycho Curious saying hasta la vista one day and just disappearing in a puff of smoke. If you are interested in learning more about the inherent borked state of the base game neighborhoods and you somehow have never seen Tanny's videos on the subject, I recommend you watch them to understand what exactly the potential risks are. As you will see or have already seen, the issues brought up are valid and may cause corruption in the long run. But unless you are a time traveler and you've gone back to 2005, you should find a clean template to download. Go enjoy Strange Town and give Tycho a couple alien cousins while you're there. The fascination with corruption isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Players have gotten used to fear it in their own gameplay, yet rejoice in witnessing it in other people's games. There is something to be said about the reputation the game has garnered over the years as this extremely unstable, look at it wrong and you break it kind of game, when it is nothing of the sort.
And she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort.
Sure, you need to be careful with the files, but same goes for any other game. The precautions you need to take are all lovingly laid out for you on the internet, like a step-by-step guide to avoid fuckery. If you play the game the way it is intended, while making sure to avoid that delete button in the family bin, I'm sure you'll have a lovely, corruption-less game. And even if you delete a couple families, you probably won't even have negative repercussions until a couple months in. So, breathe in, breathe out, and play with life.